Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Detour podcast. I'm your host, Fred DeP, and I'll be taking you through a couple concepts and topics that we're in the process of experiencing as software engineers, specifically those of us who have been in the industry for some time. So, we're going to dive deep into the realities of software development career, the good, the bad, the soul draining. Um, I myself have over 25 years in software engineering. The last 5 years, to 7, 5 to 8 years have been more along the lines of management. So software development, team management. I still get my hands dirty from time to time, but for the most part, I'm attending meetings and defining strategy for my team of developers. Um, So I wanted to get started with like why we joined this industry. We were told it was a dream job, and it kind of was in the beginning. I'll say. I want to say in the I joined in the late '90s. Um, we were told high salaries, remote work for some of us, job security. It all sounded perfect, and even back in the day, I'll say it was a lot of fun. Definitely had a lot of fun in the beginning. We would take just an idea. Usually, I had the idea, or maybe someone on my team had an idea, and we would finish our day job. Quote, I'm using air quotes, our day job. Building some sort of database extraction tool in order to write reports, or maybe building a user interface to update data for data entry folks. We're talking like the late '90s, right, when we were still building desktop applications to interface with database systems. But some of us took an interest in the internet and web technology. So we started building web applications. Well, not even web applications, just static websites, challenging our design abilities. Eventually, we started hooking these sites into database systems, and then it just kind of exploded into what we have today with social media, e-commerce, um, AI, a lot of these data engineering types. So, but in the beginning, it was really just some of us were just nerding out on some of this internet technology, and we wanted to see how far we can push it. We wanted to see what kind of problems we can solve with just something that we dreamt about, or maybe something that we just came up with while we were on our bus, on the way to, or the train on the way to work. And man, it was a lot of fun back then. It was like we were in charge. We answered very little to management. I'll say, at least for my particular role, when we were the web team. So they really didn't know what to do with us. So they really gave us a set of uh, tasks to do, and when we completed those tasks, it was really our free time. We could kind of use it to for training, or we can use it to some folks used it to surf the web. I used it to build things that I thought were cool. And sometimes those things became nothing, and sometimes they became an actual project and something that the organization adopted. But what I'm trying to say is my time was my time, and I got to choose what I wanted to do with that time. Um, and now 25 years later, I find less and less freedom during my day to day to actually define what I want to do. And it's not necessarily anyone's fault. I'll be honest with you. I've also sort of lost the passion to tinker. I don't know if any of you have ever gone through that, but I believe it's called burnout. I definitely went through about a burnout, and not really sure if I ever bounced back from it. So today, that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about burnout and maybe even the changing landscape of technology, and like what's next for those of us who unfortunately want out. Uh, so we'll start off with how we got here. A lot of us got into software development because, I mean, make a lot of money, right? make a lot of money, and you get a little bit of freedom, and you get to be kind of creative and work on with not a lot of talented people and creative teams. But over time, long enough time in the industry, you start to see the cracks starting to form in this perfect job. Um, for instance, the constant need to stay relevant, like with these new technologies that come out. It seems like once a week there's a new library, or there's a new, uh, maybe not language, but a new approach to building software applications. You constantly have to stay up to date with these new technologies, and I'll say, you know, in the early 2000s, you could probably stick with a particular tech for 10 years. And then you had to retool. And then I want to say that the 2010s, you're probably looking at 7 years. Every 7 years, you're going to have to retool. But now we're in the 2020s, and it looks like you're going to be retooling every 2 to 3 years. And are we willing to do that? Are we willing to invest all this time and effort in mastering these tool sets only for them to become obsolete every 2 to 3 years? And then you add AI into the mix, and oh boy, yeah, we're definitely going to have to stay out in front of that in order to stay relevant. And then the day to day work, the pressure of deadlines and unrealistic expectations. Just like I said, we are no longer in charge now. Now we answer to the powers that be, and they are the ones in charge. Even though maybe many of them have never built anything in their life, but they have all the right certifications and they have the right job history. You know, kissed enough ass that they're in charge now. But you, as the technologist, you are not in charge anymore. And then you have your daily, never-ending meetings in the bureaucracy. Sometimes you end up spending more time, especially in my situation. I'm actually in management, so I mean it's implied I'm spending more time in meetings than actually doing anything of value. I'll say. I'll say not doing anything, but producing anything of value. It's really just kind of relaying messages to and from. Uh, and finally, like, it's just that feeling that maybe you're just another cog in the machine. Um, maybe you have one of those bullshit jobs that they talk about. Maybe you never really build, you never really build the full scale application. You just have this really small job within the enterprise, and which is still important, I'll say. But I get that feeling that you don't know if this is if this is fulfilling enough for you to spend your days, spend your weeks, your months, your years, your decades potentially. But here we are, myself, 2.5 decades in. Did I spend that time meaningfully? I think I have, but I fear that if I were to spend another decade in this industry, I fear that I'll look back and see it as wasted time. So, like, starting with burnout. When I was going through burnout, before I went through burnout, I thought it was maybe just tired. You know, you're just you worked yourself too hard, and you're gonna need a vacation or something. You're just really tired now. Maybe you pulled an all-nighter and you need a day to recharge. And then I went through burnout, and I realized that's not what it is. What it is um, that deep exhaustion, that really deep one where you don't even care anymore. You lose motivation, you lose creativity, that spark that made you love tech in the first place. You just lost it, and you try everything to get it back. It happens when usually the culprits are you're on call 24/7, so you never really feel like you can disconnect. And this is a long period of time. This isn't a week. This is years that you've spent attached to your phone. We call it the digital leash. Then there's situations where your company pivots every 6 months, you know, and they're willing to just throw away all your work and start over. But what they don't understand is that's your work, that's your life, that's your sacrifice, that's your time away from your family that you put into that for it to just be thrown away or tossed aside. Now, I consider myself a pack rat. I don't throw anything away, and anybody who works with me knows if you want to remove some tech debt, you better copy it somewhere. I don't like the fact that you're just deleting it and it just doesn't exist anymore. It kind of makes me have a little bit of anxiety. Um, and then there's progression. Like you realize promotion doesn't necessarily mean you're working less. It just means you have more responsibilities. You know, you're not. You go from a independent contributor, a coder, to a lead. You're still expected to provide or support. You're still expected to have the same output, but you also have to train other people on how to do what you do. You're also expected to establish a strategy of development with every promotion. It gets more and more heavy. And finally, when you go through burnout, you don't want to write another line of code ever again. I mean, you sometimes you have an idea, but you'll sit there and look at your terminal. Sometimes you'll, maybe create a hello world. You might even create a couple layouts, but for the most part, and I mean, you might even get through and all the way to where you have your let's say you're building an e-commerce site. You have your layout, you have your shopping cart built out, and this is if you're even if you're using Shopify or one of those turnkey, it still takes time to build all these things out. But like you don't even want to finish anything. It's so exhausting to just get started that when let's say you pulled an all nighter and the next morning starts, you probably won't pick up that project for another 2 3 months. If this is like a personal project, this is outside of work. You're just done with code. So this isn't just for junior developers either who are starting to feel a little burnt out because maybe they're overworked. Like I've been in this industry for decades and I'm feeling it now more than ever. So that leads to where we are today, where I call this the dev detour. It's kind of like, where are we going from here? Is this all there is? It's like we've been going down the road for a certain amount of time, and we've come to the realization that maybe we're on the wrong road. Maybe there's other things out there that we can be doing. So, does that mean we are going to leave tech altogether? I think we might be selling ourselves short if that were the case. I think if you're in my shoes, you've put so much effort in learning how to build products for people. If you were to just leave and start painting houses, sure you're still doing something of value, but you know so much. I think you would do yourself a favor and society as a favor to stick with technology, just maybe deviate from the usual enterprise solution developer, cloud architecture, uh, e-commerce. I think there's something else out there for us. So I see a lot of people leaving, though. I see a lot of people walking away. More and more devs are walking away. Some are switching to UX. Some are switching to technical writing. Some are leaving tech altogether. And the question is why. I think it's because the corporate culture is specifically corporations. Corporate culture is broken. Companies claim to care about employees, but they treat them like disposable resources most of the time. The job isn't what it used to be, um, especially with AI and offshoring and automation. The role of the developer is changing. Again, we're no longer in charge anymore. We're kind of beholden to the powers. And I think people just want to build. They don't just want to maintain. We become engineers to create things, but the reality is we're maintaining a lot of tech debt. We're debugging and we're spending a lot of times in meetings. If we ever get to build anything new, you better finish it as fast as you possibly can, or else they'll just shelve the project because it took too long. You know, you built something that took 3 months to build, but it's going to save the company millions. But in their eyes, you should have built it in a month. So it doesn't matter if it would have saved millions. You should have been done 2 months ago. So you better hurry up and finish that new build because they need you to go back and maintain what already exists. So we're just kind of fed up with that. It's no longer fulfilling. It's kind of turned into a shit job. But what does that mean? Oh no. Okay, am I just rambling on? Like what is next? So if you're thinking about leaving, as I am, like what are our options? So we could go back to, well, no, we could go back to, I wouldn't even suggest it. I'll just say an option is freelancing or starting your own thing. So you think it would be rewarding if you can make it work. Now the problem is that it's definitely risky. It's risky to go freelance. I've done it in the past, but I did it because the industry was going through layoffs. Hey, remember when I mentioned job security? Not so much. I went through layoffs in 2008, so right around the time the real estate bubble burst. Everybody was losing their job at that time, and I also lost my job. So I would find another job because I had a pretty good resume. I had a lot of skills, um, and I'm really good at interviews. So I was able to land another job relatively quickly. And then 3 months into that job, I get laid off again. It's like as soon as my benefits would kick in, I get laid off. So this happened three or four times in 2008, and I decided then and there, you know what? If I'm just gonna get a job and get laid off over and over again, why don't I just start my own thing? I'll just start freelancing, and I'll just be that guy who can sign on to a project. And I really understood the company too, where if they hire someone full time and they have to lay them off, it costs a lot. It costs a lot for them to lay people off. It's very difficult. It's very painful. So I could just be that contractor who could just come in when you have a project. I had such a unique skill set. I could come in when you have a project, build out your project according to the specs, and when the project is over, when the project is done, I'll go do something else. You don't have to fire me or lay me off. I'll just move on to the next thing. Unless you have more work for me, in that case, we can negotiate the next round of work. But in the end, I became a better option or safer option for these companies. So between 2008 and I want to say 2013 to 2014, that's exactly what I did. I was the freelance contractor. I loved it. However, it was risky. I had moments where I was cashing checks and it was great, but then I had other months where, you know, we were eating peanut butter and jelly, my family of four, because I didn't have work that month. And then there was also those times where I would work for a company and they'd stiff me. They wouldn't pay me, and I'd have to just kind of eat it. Or hey, there were a few times where I hunted people down because hey, we lived in the same town. I can find you. That was few and far between. A lot of times people just don't flat out don't pay. So I had to get really good at demanding money at a crucial time. Demanding the money that I'm owed right before a tech conference. Yeah, and you have to kind of play the game, unfortunately. So that's what freelancing and starting your own thing gets you. Another option we have is to move to an adjacent role or a role opposite of developer. So something that's more of like a support of a software engineer. So your DevOps, your architect, your cloud architect. Maybe move into science, data science. That seems like a pretty interesting field that's kind of far enough away from development, but you're still a technical person, still solving technical problems. Plus, it just sounds cool. I'm a data scientist. Scientist, not like science, because of science. Or even you can like start doing media, kind of like what I'm trying to do here. Try to start a podcast. I've been told I have a pretty good voice, so here we are. Me talking into a microphone. Maybe this will be something. Maybe it won't. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Like and subscribe if you agree. Or we can leave tech altogether. So some people find fulfillment in teaching, writing, or starting a business unrelated to software. So maybe that's an avenue that you'd like to pursue. I actually started looking into teaching personally. I was going to go back to school and earn my master's in education so that I can become a teacher. And then I started really looking at that field as well, and I see a lot of people who are unhappy with that. A lot of teachers who are been teachers for a couple decades now, and they're leaving that field because they're not happy. And also started to think, is in class learning the way of the future, or is that the old way of doing things? Are things going to change in that industry too, especially with the advent of AI? I think it will. So that was no longer an option for me either. So I'm reverting back to my ability to write and my ability to communicate with the spoken word. So on this podcast, what I plan to do is have essentially one-on-ones like what I'm having with you now, speaking to you directly into a microphone, through a microphone, over the internet into your ears. So maybe you and I can connect and figure out what's next. And I'll also have a few people who I plan to bring in and interview to kind of help out with some of these issues that we're facing. Thank you for listening. I think I've spoken enough about what the concept of this podcast is going to be. If it evolves into something else, hey, great. If it sticks with this topic, I think I've thought enough about building or creating this podcast that I think I have plenty of things to share, and I think I have plenty of value to offer you. So before I forget, please like and subscribe to this content so that I can maybe continue to create this content for anybody who wants to listen. And I'm also working on a blog so that I can actually get back into writing as well. So perhaps I can help people who have fallen on hard times and are also thinking of a way out. If you're stuck, promise you if you feel stuck, I promise you you're not stuck. I promise you there are options out there. I think it's just the hard work needs to happen first, and the hard work is about to begin. So from me to you, just trust. I think that there's still value in us, even though if you're in my shoes, you're pushing 50. You're usually the first one to get laid off when the time comes. It's just ageism is a thing, unfortunately. And if you feel stuck, just know that you're not stuck. There are options, and hopefully we can work together to create the next industry. Because you know what, we created this one. Thank you everyone for listening. God bless and have a great day.